Hi, everybody, and welcome to Story Hour. I am your host, Daniel Marcus. My brilliant co-host is Laura Blackwell. And it's Wednesday evening again in California, and we are back again bringing you spectacular spoken word speculative fiction. We bring you work from really across the entire huge tent, the entire multiverse of speculative genres, horror, fantasy, hard SF, soft SF, space opera, your favorite punk dialect, slipstream, weird, grimdark, dark weird, and so on and so on. We welcome new writers for whom the ink is just dry on their first contracts, and grizzled old veterans who have been winning awards for decades, and everybody in between. Um, so I started this thing about over 6 years ago, and it was in the early days of the pandemic, and things out there were very weird. Not at all like now. Um, we were living in what seemed to us to be the sort of burgeoning apocalypse that we'd all been reading about and writing about for many years. Um, and what I wanted to do with Story Hour was really is just kind of me and my writer friends to get together, create a place where we could share our work, enjoy a little community, and kind of shelter in place against the weirdness out there. And shortly after I kicked it off, I asked my friend Laura to join me in co-hosting, and we have been at it ever since. And fast forward 6 years, it's still weird out there, weirder, in fact. Um, but we're still here and we're not going anywhere. I think we need stories more than ever right now. We need each other more than ever right now. We need community more than ever. So I, uh, we rely on a very ancient tradition, which is folks sitting around the fire telling each other lies. So every week we do that. We have two writers, about 30 minutes each, narrating their own work. Before we go on, I want to thank SIFWA, the Science Fiction Fantasy Writers of America, for awarding us once again, year after year, the SIFWA Givers Grant to help us keep the lights on and keep these virtual rooms open. Givers Fund grants are intended to aid projects that align with SIFWA's mission to promote, advance, and support science fiction and fantasy writing around the world. This fund is made possible with the generosity of donors from within the community and partnerships with the publishing ecosystem. So thank you, Sifwa. And with that, I'm really excited to welcome our authors this evening, Rati Mehrotra and Kari Maaren. And we are going to start the show with Rati. Born and raised in India, Rati Mehrotra now lives and writes in Toronto, Canada. She's the author of the science fantasy novels Markswoman and Mahimata, and the YA fantasy novels Night of the Raven, Dawn of the Dove, and Flower and Thorn. Her short fiction has been shortlisted for the Sunburst Award, nominated for the Aurora Award, and has appeared in multiple venues, including the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, Clarkesworld, Lightspeed, Uncanny, Apex, Podcastle, and Cast of Wonders. Rati, welcome back, and the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Danielle, for having me at Storia. I'm so happy to be back. Today, I'll be reading a story called The Singing Tree. I'm going to start with the content warnings for drug addiction, overdose, anorexia, attempted suicide off page, and some swearing. The singing tree blooms once a year in May for about 40 seconds. We'd been trying and failing to catch it in the act for as long as I could remember. This year was no exception. We piled into the wagon and drove away from Ennismore, Dad singing loud, tuneless songs that made me want to close my ears. Mum twisted back and gave a big, fake, isn't this fun smile. We're going to hear it bloom this year. I can feel it in my bones. I can smell it in the wind. I rolled my eyes. She said that every year, and every year we came back disappointed, while news channels gushed with breathless reports of lives transformed and wounds healed. All malarkey as far as I was concerned. Ria, my older sister, snorted. Why can't we do normal things on the long weekend like other families? She said. Go to the beach, stay in a hotel for a couple of nights. Something I can actually tell my friends about. Dad stopped singing, and Mum's mouth pressed in a thin line. Hotels are dirty, she said. And they cost money, I added under my breath. Mum frowned. What did you say, Kitty? The name's Kitari, I snapped. I hated it when she called me Kitty. I should know, said Mum. I named you, didn't I? To my relief, June and Jade began to fight. I could always count on the twins to divert Mum's attention. I looked out of the window, feeling the breeze on my face, smelling the bright freshness of spring. It was a sunny day, just perfect for being out, and if I hadn't been feeling so left out, I might have appreciated it a bit more. All I could think was, here I was, stuck with my family on a dumb road trip, while my besties, Tanya and Mikhail, were in Cowbell Beach. Their families had decided to go together this year. Maybe it was better this way. At least I didn't have to watch them kissing each other. Yuck, yuck. And maybe they were relieved I wasn't tagging along for a change, the perpetual third wheel. I sniffed and gulped back a sob. Getting a cold, Kitty? Said Ria. I scowled and turned away from her, swallowing the retort on my lips. Rural Ontario whipped by in a blur of green fields dotted with horses. I concentrated on the scenery and reminded myself, yet again, that even though she was 16, 2 years older than me, way prettier, way smarter, she had it harder than I did. Last summer, she'd overdosed on fentanyl and ended up in the ER. Mom and Dad didn't like to admit it, not even to themselves. They talked about Ria's accident as if the pills had walked up to the breakfast table and jumped into her cereal when she wasn't looking. Her troubles were whispered about as if they were something apart from her. The lank-haired boyfriend who turned out to be a small-time drug dealer. The eating sickness that turned her into a rake-thin shadow of her former self. Ria had been clean for months now. She went to a counselor every fortnight, and I even saw her eat real food. But she dropped out of school and become all moody and withdrawn. Not a bit like the sister I used to have. The Ria I had known used to whisper secrets to me at night, play silly games with the twins, and bake cookies with Mum in the kitchen. Not mope around with a chip the size of a brick on her shoulder. At least she was still alive, still in counseling, still with us. 4 hours and 3 restroom stops later, Dad brought the wagon to a puttering halt. I jerked out of my daydream and saw the jam of cars ahead. What the hell? Said Dad, sticking his head out the window. What's going on? A trooper shouted instructions, diverting traffic away to the right. He neared our wagon and said, Please keep moving, sir. You're holding up the cars ahead. But we need to go straight ahead, said Dad. We're camping at Singing Tree Park tonight. I have a permit. Singing Tree Park has been closed, said the trooper. Someone vandalized the tree and it's been fenced off for the season. Who on earth would do that? Said Mum. The trooper shrugged. Some kids. They're in custody, but the damage is done. Sir, I have to ask you to move now. Dad started the wagon. We sat in stunned silence as he turned right, following the line of cars leaving the area. People milled about the roadblock, taking photographs of themselves. Bloody tourists with their bloody selfies, said Dad. Language, dear, said Mum automatically. Oh, this is bad news. They may never reopen Singing Tree Park. And there isn't another singing tree in the entire province. Good, said Ria, rolling her shoulders with exaggerated relief. Maybe we can go home and have a normal weekend now. Without any warning, Dad twisted the wheel of the wagon and we lurched onto a narrow county road to the left of the highway. Don't be too sure of that, I muttered. Ria gripped the sides of her seat and shot me a glare. This isn't the way home, Dean, said Mum. Want to show you something, said Dad, and that was all we could get out of him. We bumped along the potholed road, teeth on edge. The twins fought, and Ria and I bickered. Dad took another turn, and the road degenerated into little more than a dirt track, cutting through a dark green wood. At last, when I was just about ready to scream from boredom, Dad brought the wagon to a halt. We got out, struck speechless by the sheer nowhereness of it all. Dirt track, tall trees that gathered thickly overhead, and the loud chittering of insects. That was it. Dad had really exceeded himself this time. Ria, of course, was the first to find her voice. Great. Just great. I need a restroom. Dad waved his hands expansively. Left side or right? Take your pick. Why are we here? Said Ria. Her voice had gone quiet the way it did before she bit someone's head off. Dad didn't seem to notice. Want to show you something, he repeated. And he grinned like he had something amazing hidden up his sleeve that would make us jump and clap our hands. And maybe about 10 years ago he would have. But he was old now. Or maybe we were too old to fall for his tricks. Even June and Jade looked down and scuffled their shoes like they were embarrassed for him. You're bonkers, you know that? Said Ria. Ria, said Mum. Watch your mouth. Ria turned on her. And you just encourage him. Every year it's the same. Like we're stuck doing the same thing over and over. Just because he heard it once half a century ago, he forces us to go on these pointless trips. Ria, began Dad. No, she shouted. Don't say anything. If you tell us one more time what it was like, I swear I'll scream. I don't care what it was like for you, Dad. It's not going to happen for me. She began to cry, big hiccuping sobs racking her chest. Mum went up to her, and I drew the twins aside for a game of snap on the grass beside the path. When the twins had won, they always cheated. I left them to squabble over the deck of cards and got up. Mum and Ria were nowhere to be seen. Maybe they'd gone to pee behind the trees. Dad stood by himself near the wagon, a lost look on his face. I felt sorry for him, even though it was his fault Ria was having a meltdown. I walked up to him. Dad, I said, if we start now, we can be home before nightfall. Dad gave me a puzzled frown like he couldn't place who I was or what I was saying. I repeated myself and he said, I thought we could camp here tonight. There's something special here, something I spotted a couple of years ago when I took the wrong turn for Roseneath. It was small then, but perhaps it's big enough now. What's big enough? I said. The singing tree, said Dad. I stared at him. Dad, I said, with as much patience as I could muster, you must have seen something else. It can't be a singing tree. The forest department would have mapped it. Not everything can be mapped, said Dad. How can you track the path of a song? It's a fallacy that the singing tree reproduces through its songs. A single blossom from a dying tree carries the seed of the daughter tree. It's why there are so few left in Canada, or the rest of the world for that matter. But I don't have the heart to correct him. Mum and Ria emerged from the trees. My sister's eyes were red and swollen, but at least she wasn't crying anymore. Dean, we're going home, said Mum in her no-nonsense, brook no argument voice. I cleared my throat. Dad says there's a singing tree here. There was silence for a few moments while Ria and Mum digested this. The twins, who had snuck up behind me, shouted together, We want to see it! Dad beamed and stood up straighter. Follow me. It's a short walk from here. He strode down the path before Mom could stop him, the twins skipping behind. I ran after the twins. They needed someone sensible in case something happened. And Ria came after me, so of course Mom followed too. Ria caught up with me as we entered the woods behind Dad. Another wild goose chase, she said. But I could see she was curious, like me. I pushed ahead through the undergrowth, cursing whenever something scratched my face or poked my skin, which was every 5 seconds. Ria laughed once when she fell, a thin, high sound that grated on my nerves. Mom grunted with the effort of keeping up with us, calling out now and then to make sure we were all there. A little later, I bumped into Dad. He stood at the edge of a small clearing, June and Jade on either side of him, clutching his arms. In the middle of the clearing stood a small, black-limbed tree with silver-green leaves that sparkled in the sunlight. A singing tree. I swear, in that moment, I forgave Dad everything. I don't know if it's old enough to sing, said Dad, but I thought I'd show you anyway. Mom stumbled up behind us and gasped. It's beautiful, Dean, she said, her voice all quivery. Our very own queen of the forest, said Ria. We could chop it down for firewood and no one would know. Dad rounded on her, his eyes blazing. The twins shrank back and even Mum was paralyzed. For a moment, I thought he would hit Ria and I prayed, don't, Dad, don't. Dad took a deep breath and said, but you'd know. You'd know going through life that you hurt something both beautiful, the way you hurt your own beautiful self. I closed my eyes, feeling sick. Ria made a gulping noise. Mom said faintly, Dean, don't. Dad ignored her. What's beautiful must be loved and cherished, the way we love and cherish you, he said. I'd give up my limbs to get back my girl, to take away her hurt. But I can't. I can only tell her that I love her. And I'm sorry I wasn't there when she was hurting, when she was scared. And if there's any way on earth to make up for it, by God, I will. Ria's face crumpled. To my amazement, Dad held his arms out to her and she stumbled into them. We camped that night under the moonlight-dappled branches of the singing tree. It didn't sing after all. Like Dad said, it was still quite young. But we played an old recording of a song from Singing Tree Park. Maybe it wasn't the same as being in the presence of a blossoming tree, but it was close. The song was like nothing I can describe. I could say it was like spring, the trilling of birds and the pattering of rain and the smell of new life. But it was also like the crunch of autumn leaves and the feel of cool wind and damp grass underfoot. And that is also not true, for was it not something else entirely, something alien I cannot put words to? For as the song reached its crescendo, I saw, shining in the dark, the invisible cords that connected us. Silver cables ran like nerves between myself and the twins and my parents, my sister and the tree. The cords stretching from my sister to the rest of us were thin and frayed, almost completely unraveled. She was hanging on to us by mere threads. But the song was healing them, twisting the strands back into thick cable, binding her back to us, until we were surrounded by a great silver web of light, so bright it hurt the eyes. The recording finished and the light faded away. My eyes were stinging. Ria reached for me, hugging me so hard I thought my ribs would break. I could no longer see the silver cords, but I knew they were there, just like the song was still there, echoing in the chambers of my heart. All that night I lay awake, listening to the hum of wind and the whisper of leaves. And I wondered where it had come from, this lone tree that stood sentinel over us. How it had escaped the tourist hordes and the park officials. I like to think of it as our tree, the tree that gave me back my sister. I like to think that no one else will ever find it, that it grows only for us, in those spaces where we overlap and belong to each other, and love and hate each other. Just before dawn, I fell into a light sleep, and then I dreamed that I ran through the forest, hand in hand with my sisters. Every tree was a singing tree, and they were all in bloom. Thank you.
Oh my, that was lovely, Rati. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, it is our custom here at Story Hour to just take a beat between authors, just let the previous work sort of ring, resonate, and kind of cleanse our spiritual palate to get ready for the next author. I just take a breath. So y'all can do what you want for 10 seconds, but that's what I do. All right, Rati Mehrotra, thank you so much for joining us again with that lovely story. Our next author is Kari Maaren. Kari is the author of the novel Weave a Circle Round, which won the Copper Cylinder Award and was a finalist for the Andre Norton Nebula Award and the Sunburst Award. She has an ongoing webcomic, the award-winning It Never Rains, and a completed one, West of Bathurst. Her short fiction has appeared in The Orange and Bee and the anthology Tales from the Silence, and her short story, Made to be Broken, will be included in Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy 2026. Kari lives in Toronto, surrounded by books. Welcome to Story Hour, Kari. Take it away.
Thank you very much. I am reading Made to be Broken today, and the content warning would be that there are quite a few mentions of cannibalism all the way through, and that's about it, though. So this is Made to be Broken. The hole in the sky is spitting out babies again, said the crow. In the midst of her churning, the curator paused. She had become used to the crow's way of putting things. He didn't see the world as she did, but like her, he appreciated potential sources of fresh meat. I'm sure it can't be, she said. I was there, said the crow, hopping onto her shoulder. Big baby with blue legs came screaming through the sky, heading this way now. Told me I was a handsome specimen. What's a specimen? A type of fish, said the curator, who had never in her life admitted to not knowing something. If the crow had seen someone fall, someone had fallen. The curator stood and set the butter churn aside. Is this one of the food ones? Asked the crow. How should I know? What was your sense? She could feel him tilting his head. His feathers brushed her cheek. Probably female. Talked to the elm tree, but didn't notice the goats. Didn't throw rocks or cry, or have anything collectible. She tried not to notice the little stab of disappointment she felt at those words. Everything's fine, she told herself, nipping inside the house to open the windows and build up the fire. She had little to prepare. The main room of the house was small and cozy, and she kept it neat. The spinning wheel and the loom were tucked into their alcoves, the pots and pans were hung beside the hearth, and the door to the other room was firmly closed. The cat, which only talked to her when she didn't want it to, stretched insolently on the windowsill. I hope it's one of the food ones, said the crow. I hope it's not. Uneasiness prickled over her skin. It had been a long time, and the visitor had talked to the tree but missed the goats. That's not how the story goes. Maybe this one will be different. They're not supposed to be different. Dibs on the eyeballs, said the crow. The crow had been right. The visitor was a girl. She was in her late teens, which was the right age, but clearly fashions had changed in the world above. As the crow had said, the girl had blue legs, or at least legs sheathed in blue cloth. Short black hair framed a face alive with curiosity. Hey, she said. They usually say, Greetings, dread mistress, the crow observed from a tree branch. The girl spared the crow a glance. Animals talk here, and trees. Clearly I'm not in Kansas anymore. Which of the witches are you? Wrong word. Just eat her now, said the crow. The curator knew any attempt to quell him would be useless. When he got like this, it was better just to let him talk himself out. Personally, she had no issue with being called a witch. I'm the curator, she said. Come in if you like. Okay, said the girl, but, you're not going to eat me, are you? The curator paused. Everything felt off balance. They usually didn't ask. They did what they were told, or they didn't. Most of the ones who didn't end up eaten were cowed anyway, with shadows under their eyes and bruises on their wrists. The others were rude from the start. Not right now, she said. Kill, said the girl, and followed her into the house. There was a way these things always went. Surely, thought the curator as she moved from twilight to firelight, they would go that way this time too. The girl had fallen from the world above. The curator knew there had to have been a time people hadn't fallen, back before the crow and the house and the cat. She couldn't remember that time, of course. Can't you? But there were only ever 3 reasons anyone fell from the sky. Hey, said the girl, thanks. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I guess maybe you know how to help me? My name's... The curator held up a hand and the girl fell silent. Yes, said the curator, I can help you if you do as I ask. She never let them give her their names. It wouldn't do to become too attached. It was generally understood by the people who fell from the sky and probably weren't going to end up eaten that tasks would be required if they wanted what they'd come for. The tasks, the curator told herself, would get them back on track. She started small. Take the spinning wheel for a bit. 1 skein will do. Sounds good, said the girl. Maybe, thought the curator, this was going to work out after all. The girl sat down at the spinning wheel, set her foot to the treadle, and spun the wheel. She got up a good speed and pumped away, the very picture of industry. After a time, the curator realized she, the crow, and the cat were standing in a row, watching in fascination as the girl spun empty air. The crow broke first. Why? He said. He knew what spinning was, even if he had never grasped exactly what it was for. Why spin the wind? Is it magic? Oh, I'm sorry, said the girl, stopping. I thought this was right. You have to, said the curator. There was no real way to finish the thought. The girl clearly didn't know how to spin. Maybe just sweep for now, said the curator. Sure, said the girl. But she couldn't sweep either. We have a Roomba, she said when everyone stared at the way she held the broom wrong and fanned it above the floor as if trying to waft the dirt away. The strange word just made them stare more. The curator set her to peeling vegetables. She had never known anyone to slice open 4 fingers on both hands at a single stroke. I'm totally going to get this, said the girl, bleeding all over the carrots. Eat her now, said the crow as the girl used her bandaged hands to dust a shelf. A bowl fell to the ground and shattered. The curator winced. The problem, of course, was that they couldn't eat her now. People came to the house for 3 reasons. They came because they were running away from something. They came because they were running towards something, or they came because they were imitating someone who had chosen one of the first 2 options. It was people in the 3rd category who invariably broke the rules and ended up eaten. That was how it went. You refused to work and your bones were packed in a chest and sent home to your mother. Everybody knew that. The girl wasn't refusing to work. She was simply extremely bad at it. Well, what's this? She said when the curator in desperation set her to washing dishes. The girl waved a hand in the air and a round white object slipped from her injured fingers and nearly knocked the cat off the windowsill. Soap, said the curator. If you'll just slow... What's this? More soap. Please. Oh, no, said the girl as the plate hit the floor and broke in 2. That wasn't soap. Unpleasantness, said the crow from his refuge behind the loom. After the girl upended the butter churn into the stew, the curator admitted defeat. Just sit there, she said, beside that door. Try not to move. I'm really sorry, said the girl, plopping herself down against the wall. Chores aren't like this where I come from. The curator bit her lip. The visitors were all the same. All of them, for whatever reason, had gone out into the world. The useful ones would be rewarded, the wily ones would steal, and the lazy ones would be dinner. But this girl didn't seem to be running to or from anything, and she certainly wasn't imitating anyone. She wasn't useful or wily or lazy. She was just here. The curator said, "Why did you fall down from the upper world?" You mean through the manhole? I don't know. I guess I wasn't paying attention. The curator paused briefly over the strangeness of manhole. They usually said well. Yes, she said, but why were you there in the first place? Was something worrying you? A bad step parent, cruel sisters, some kind of curse? The girl tilted her head in a way that reminded the curator of the crow. Well, no. Both my mums are all right. My sister's a dork, but we get along okay. And we don't get curses where I come from. She needed to make it make sense. If it didn't, it was as if she was back in the time before. No, they all come here for a reason. Hey, said the girl, what's behind this door? That's for later, said the curator sharply, but the girl was already on her feet and tugging at the handle. No, I said, sorry, I lack impulse control. The girl opened the door. This isn't the right order. She has to earn. I'm not sure things are going to go in the right order today. By the time the curator entered the collection room, the girl was admiring the contents of the shelves. There were a lot of them. The room had grown over time, the shelves constructing themselves as more were needed. The curator couldn't remember where all the items had come from. Some had arrived here with visitors and been exchanged for other things, but others... I dreamed them, I think. I stopped at some point, but I used to do that a lot. She had expected the girl to touch everything, but the girl seemed startled into a kind of awe. Wow, these are... What's this one? A cloak of darkness, said the curator. What about this one? Oh, that's just one of the wishing rings. As always when she was in here, her discomfort was growing. She followed the rules. She was happy to give bits of her collection away to worthy visitors or let the cunning ones steal an item or two. She didn't keep what she didn't need, but she didn't like thinking about this room unless she had to. The girl was examining a flaming sword. You asked how I ended up here, she said. If anything was worrying me. It's not my family. It's just everything. Everything, said the curator. The girl said, have you heard of climate change? And she told the curator about her world. The crow and the cat crept into the room at some point, though the curator wasn't sure when. All she knew was that eventually there were 3 of them listening to the girl talk about rising sea levels and inflation and how nobody could afford a place to live, and mass shootings and mass deportation and fascism and racism and new laws that were scarily similar to old laws and billionaires and xenophobia and the minimum wage. She described the internet and the alt-right and the way everybody seemed overly worried about who went into which bathroom. She spent a short time on the problems with generative AI and much longer on the potential for nuclear war. It's like the whole world is an evil stepmother, thought the curator at one point through a haze of horror. The girl fell silent. She had spoken matter-of-factly, as if reciting a list of ingredients. Her eye fell on a pair of 7-league boots. Nice, she said. Can I have these? Yes, said the curator. Something had shifted. None of this was following the rules, but the rules you made, the rules that didn't exist until that day. I don't remember that day. Of course you do. Of course she did. Of course she remembered being that long before she had known what time was or language or stories, when she had been a sort of spider sitting in a hole, just a stomach and too many eyes. And then someone had fallen into the hole, someone small and alive and frightened. And she had opened her mouth, which was all she had known to do back then, and the someone had held up something pointy and made of wood and wrapped enticingly in fiber, and she'd had her first thought, what is that? I want it. And everything had opened up around her, all the possibilities, all the webs with stories in them. The frightened girl clutching the spindle had seen the monster shrink and flex into something more like her. And the monster had sat down on the ground and demanded the girl teach her how to spin. Later, it had all got more orderly, delimited by rules upon rules. Later, there had been the house and the crow and the cat and the collection, and the stories had come to her one at a time. She still got to eat some of them, and that was how those stories ended. Others she sent back out into the world. The girl picked up a glowing sword. What about this? That too, said the curator. The people who came to her went away with what they needed. What do you need when the problem is everything? She's only going to cause chaos. Look, she's got hold of one of the time rubies. Maybe chaos is what her story needs. This one's so pretty, said the girl, her hand on the blue knife of destiny. The curator nodded. Take whatever you like. When the girl set out for her world again, she was loaded down with more magic objects than the curator remembered having. Getting back would be no problem for her. She had picked up at least 5 transformation rings and a pair of detachable wings. She was bubbling over with excitement, which puzzled the crow. What's it even all for? He asked as she unlatched the garden gate. I don't know, said the girl. I'll have to make it up as I go along. The curator didn't hear the rest of the conversation because she went back to the house to pack. The animals came to watch her. Good idea, said the crow. It probably wasn't, but continuing on as usual wasn't a good idea either. Being a curator, never changing, crouching forever at the bottom of a hole. Maybe there were other places to find and other rules to break. She shrugged on her pack. Not sure, she said, but I think I'd like to go out into the world. The crow hopped onto one shoulder and the cat onto the other. Dibs on the eyeballs, said the crow. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Um, Kari Maaren, Rati Mehrotra, thank you both so much for joining us at Story Hour. Um, really, really fine work. And thank you all for coming back and joining us once again. Next week, we will have Brooklyn and Butler and E.C. Dorgan. So please come on by. Don't miss that show. You can also go to the website, storyhour2020.com, and see what's coming up, but also you can just peruse over 6 years of links to shows. So you can find your favorite author or somebody you've never heard of and fire up a show. Most of the links work. The migration from Facebook to YouTube was um, not perfect, but most of the links work. So check it out if you're so inclined. A lot of good stuff there. And meanwhile, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Uh, Thanks, of course, and always to my fabulous co-host, Laura Blackwell, and again to our 2 authors this evening. And take care, folks. Be well. Good night.